Welcome in to Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on the program today, I'm going to be breaking down the latest Texans draft visits and what this could mean for Nick Caserio's draft plan. Each and every year, I take a look at, the Texans' top 30 draft visits, and more often than not, a lot of those guys end up being picks for your Houston Texans. So we'll look at the latest guys who are visiting with the Houston Texans and break down what this could mean for this year's draft. Before we get going, I usually tweet out whenever the Texans are going to have draft visits with certain guys, or I'll retweet guys like Aaron Wilson or people who are breaking down the latest visits to your Houston Texans. So if you want up-to-date Texans information 24/7, no matter when, you can click in. You can follow me on X at Jeremy Chuggs and on TikTok at Jeremy Chuggs. IG, I'm at Texans Today CS. Check me out on all three platforms. Those links are in the comment section and description of today's video. If you want the latest up-to-date news and rumors, you know where to follow me on social media. Now, let's get into the visits that we've already broken down here on the channel. The Texans top 30 draft visits. Here are some of the names that we've already talked about. Jaydon Blue, Brashard Smith, Kyle Williams, who's actually making his official visit this Wednesday with the Houston Texans. Matthew Golden, Shavon Revel Jr., Easton Mascarenas-Arnold, Josh Connerly, who's visiting with the Houston Texans as we speak today, Charles Grant, and then here are some more that we've broken down here on the channel. Nic Scourton, defensive lineman from A&M, Joshua Farmer, Chase Lundt, Upton, Stout, and Oluwafemi Oladejo. So all these guys we've broken down here on the channel so far. So let's get into some of the new Texans draft visits that have come down the pipeline this weekend. Quinshon Judkins is visiting with the Houston Texans, a top 30 visit for Houston. We've already talked about him and his fit with the Texans on the channel in the past, and I think him, along with some of the other running backs that they brought in on top 30 visits, could be a strong indicator of what the Texans want to do during the 2025 NFL draft. Obviously, Quinshon Judkins is one of the top running back prospects in this year's draft class. So it makes me wonder, with Quinshon Judkins and a couple of the guys that they've already talked to, could the Texans go running back early in this NFL draft? Texans fans, me included, all believe the Texans are going to take a wide receiver early. If not in the first round, maybe the second or the third round. But could Nick Caserio draft a running back or tight end before he takes a receiver? This is the biggest question on everybody's mind because, a lot of people just assume, the Texans need another wide receiver. But could they be looking to pair somebody up with Joe Mixon? I want to hear from you. Would you be mad if the Texans took a running back early in this draft? If they took a running back before they took a wide receiver, would that upset you? Go down in the comment section and let me know your thoughts on this. If they took a running back early on in the draft, what would be your thoughts? I wouldn't be too upset because the main goal is to make the offense better, right? That's the main goal from this offseason. A lot of stuff that they've done, a lot of the moves that they've made have been predicated toward the offensive side of the football, right? Like trading Laramie Tunsil, bringing in a new offensive coordinator in Nick Caserio, releasing Shaq Mason, trading Kenyon Green. This offense needs to improve. They also brought in guys like Christian Kirk. So the main goal is to make this offense better. And you could argue that the offense needs a more juice in the run game because last year, even though Joe Mixon was good, the run game was definitely lacking for this Texans team. And it was evident towards the end of last season and into the playoffs that this Texans running game needed some help. And I think, and I've talked about on the channel before, CJ Stroud needs a run game. He needs this run game to be better for this Texans team because that leads to less pressure on CJ Stroud, which we saw a ton of last year. Defenders were just able to pin their ears back and get after Stroud. And the run game, a better run game, lends itself to more play action. And I've talked about CJ Stroud, one of the best games that he's ever had as a pro was in that playoff game, rookie year, up against the Cleveland Browns, where he was 4 for 6, over 145 yards and 3 touchdowns up against the Browns whenever he was in play action. So CJ, a really good play action quarterback, but you need that run game to initiate the play action. And last year, the Texans offensive ranks, even though they were 15th in rushing yards per game, they were 21st in total passing yards per game, 22nd in yards per game, and 19th in points per game. And I know you're like 15th, so they were middle of the road in the running game, right? But really, when you take a closer look at it, it was really a one-man show. Joe Mixon was making guys miss. He was the guy for this Houston Texans backfield. Nobody else had close to the production. We saw when Joe Mixon was injured for those couple games after the illegal hip drop tackles during the season, this Texans offense, this Texans, whole offensive unit looked discombobulated. They didn't look like the same offensive unit without Joe Mixon. And a lot of that has to do with the offensive line. Obviously, that's a major fix that needs to happen. Because look at this. Pass block win rate, they were 22nd. Run block win rate, an advanced metric that you could look at for offensive linemen, they were 31st in the NFL. Not good, Jim. Obviously, the sacks were a problem. They were 31st as well. But the running game wasn't there, right? Like, teams were not afraid of this Texans offensive line. They were not afraid of this Texans run game, even with Joe Mixon. He was bottled up a ton, and it seemed like his only runs came whenever he broke 2 or 3 tackles and was able to, go off on a 30, 40-yard scamper. Bottom line is this Texans offense needs help. And obviously, the wide receiver room does as well. Look, Nico Collins is a clear wide receiver 1. I like Christian Kirk, but behind those two, a ton of question marks on this Texans wide receiver depth chart. But at the end of the day, if Nick Caserio, if DeMeco Ryans believes that adding another running back, kind of a, lightning to Joe Mixon's thunder, can really improve this Texans offense, maybe that's the way that this team goes in the NFL draft. Now, coming up, I have more draft visits for this Texans team, but before I break that down, I couldn't do today's show if it wasn't for our amazing sponsors over at Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, those are guaranteed. I'm telling you, and where are my basketball fans at, right? The Rockets are red hot, and you can get tickets to any Rockets game, any Rockets playoff game, with the official ticketing partner of Texans today, Game Time. You can get great deals on last-second tickets and even see your seat view before you buy the tickets. All-in prices show you what you pay without any hidden fees or expenses, and Game Time has zone deals. You pick this section, Game Time picks the seats for an average savings of 18%. And as I'm looking at the Game Time picks, which basically filters out all fluff, shows you the best deals on the app right now. The Rockets' last home game of the regular season up against the Denver Nuggets. You can see, it shows you the bowl view. It shows you the layout of the stadium and different seats that you can get. Some really good prices right now over on Game Time. I absolutely love using this view right here because it really shows you where you're going to be sitting in the stadium and kind of what view you're going to be getting. Right here, look, the super deal. It shows you the view, and there's actually some really great deals for this final regular season game for your Houston Rockets. So if you want to see a Rockets game, maybe you want to see the Houston Astros, or you want to go to a concert, comedy show, anything around your area, well, Game Time has you covered. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. And as I promised, some more Texans draft visits that happened over the weekend, or at least have been announced over the weekend. Another Texas A&M defensive lineman, Shemar Turner, has been talked about a Texans top 30 draft visit. And look, he is an incredible athlete, insane. He lit up the combine, a 9.9 RAS score, relative athletic score, which basically takes into account your weight, your height, all your measurables, and then everything you do at the combine, right? Your 40, your bench press, everything. Out of 10, he scored a 9.9. He is an incredible athlete. Problem is, not a ton of production in college. He's a raw prospect, and he's been getting some round 1 hype. So I'd be a little worried if the Texans go with Shemar Turner in round 1. But maybe this is a guy where if he falls all the way to your pick in round 2, and you're like, maybe we want to go BPA, Shemar Turner on the board, I don't know. It could be a very tempting pick for DeMeco Ryans, who loves him some defensive players in this draft class. And speaking of defensive players on the defensive line, they met with another Texas guy, Alfred Collins, a 5-year starter at the University of Texas, and he has a ton of production. It was great this year in the college football playoff, and he has a great blend of size and skill. He could be a mid-round steal. A lot of people are talking about Alfred Collins as, a day 2, maybe early day 3 guy who can surprise a lot of people and in the right system can really flourish in this year's draft class, depending on where he lands. And I think with these guys who have been visiting with the Houston Texans, it shows that the Texans want to build in the trenches, right? The Texans should continue to build on both sides of the line of scrimmage, on offensive and defensive line. And I expect at least 4 picks to be linemen in this year's draft class. I really hope maybe like 3 offensive linemen, 1 defensive lineman, but I could see them going 2 and 2 because they really need to build the O-line, and DeMeco wants to build on that strength of the defensive line. So I could see the Texans going with at least 4 guys, and we talked about a lot of early guys in the NFL draft, and somebody that I kind of broke down a little bit before on the show and that I want to revisit, Chase Lundt, a 4-year starter at UConn. I could see the Texans going with, guard and tackle early on in the draft, and also getting one later in the draft. A guy like Chase Lundt, a 4-year starter at UConn. All of his starts have been at right tackle. He's probably a day 3 pick in this year's draft, but if you're sitting there in round 5, maybe you trade back and you have a pick in round 6, maybe even if he falls all the way to round 7, I could see the Texans getting extra insurance, more guys along the front 5 on the Texans offensive line, or maybe some extra defensive linemen as well later on in the draft, double dipping at those positions. Let's talk about some more Texans draft visits though. Zion Childress from the University of Kentucky, a 5-year starter. First 2 were at Texas State, and then the last 3 years were at Kentucky. He's a tackling machine, and he shows that swarm mentality. When you look up his highlights, when you look up his film, Zion Childress loves to tackle. I believe at the beginning of this year, I think maybe 2 or 3 games throughout the season, he led the team in all major tackling categories, like tackles for loss, forced fumbles. He was insane for Kentucky this year. He has a ton of versatility. He can play in the nickel, free safety, and he's probably a mid to late round pick. Another one of those guys where, sitting there in round 4, round 5, if the Texans are on the board and he's on the board right there, I could see the Texans making this pick of Zion Childress, adding to the secondary. And one more guy I wanted to talk about, Texans draft visit, Alan Walker from Jackson State. And this one's a little perplexing, but I could see the thought process behind this, because you're going to have to look at round 7 guys, right? And that's tough. Which guys are you going to be taking in round 7? But you need to do your due diligence for the later rounds as well. And Alan Walker is a guy who has a ton of upside, not a lot of production in college, but has that upside to where, he's athletic. He's kind of a tweener between a, linebacker coverage guy hybrid, and can give you a lot in the special teams as well. And I'm not going to mince it, like I said, not a lot of production in college. When you look him up, there's not going to be a lot on Alan Walker, but somebody, if you're sitting there in round 7, you're like, hey, who's a high upside guy that we can get to help out this special teams unit? Alan Walker fits that bill, and the Texans are bringing him on a draft visit. Remember, a couple years, or was it last year, they brought in Jamal Hill, the linebacker from Oregon, and we were like, why are they bringing him in? And then it came the Texans pick in round 6, and they were like, oh yeah, he's still on the board. That's going to be the pick. Look for Alan Walker's name in round 7 as the Texans begin to make their later round picks in this year's draft. Now, that's all I have for you on today's show, folks. Like I said at the top of the show, if you want to hit me up on social media, if you want to see the latest around your Houston Texans, you can give me a follow on X, Twitter, at Jeremy Chuggs. And as always, if you made it to the end of today's video, we're obviously doing something right. Hit that subscribe button. Make sure you keep us locked in for Texans content all year long. And yeah, it's 100% for free.